let's get started. I'm going to put on my principal's hat at this point. I taught high school for a little while, and I don't have my ruler with me tonight, but so wow, it's fantastic to see all of you guys here tonight, all of our old friends and all of our new friends. If you haven't been to a Poetry at Tech reading before, really glad to have you. And as we kick off the second half of Poetry at Tech's 16th season, can you believe that? Already our 16th season. I love that. The season is, of course, continues to be dedicated to our big papa of poetry, Thomas Lux. I'm Travis Denton, and I have the honor of serving as the McEver Chair in Poetry this spring. And marking our 16th season, we need to all remember that Poetry at Tech wouldn't exist without the generous gifts of others. Poetry at Tech was created around the year 2001 when two Georgia Tech alums, unbeknownst to one another, decided that Georgia Tech needed a world-class poetry program, that students, like a lot of you, needed poetry classes, instruction in poetry writing. And so Henry Bourne and Bruce McEver created the endowments that became Poetry at Tech, and we're thrilled about that. The event that we're having here tonight is proof positive of the change that can come about from endowments such as what created Poetry at Tech. You guys are all proof positive of that. Thanks to all of you who come to the readings and attend our free spring McEver poetry workshops. We have a poetry workshop with David Bottoms coming up on March 3rd. We might have a spot left there, so if you'd like to claim that spot, send me an email and let's talk about it. And of course, thanks to our fearless dean of Ivan Allen College, Jackie Royster, for being here tonight. Thanks to our chair of the School of Literature, Media, and Communication, Richard Utz. And Poetry at Tech's outreach is meant not only to share our gifts with community members, but to reach out to students. And looking out over this crowd, it's clear the program isn't just doing well, but it's thriving. And now for the big question, and I'd love to ask this. For how many of you is this your first poetry reading? That's fantastic. And as I always like to say, this is your gateway drug and you're hooked. The next big question I'd like to ask is if you received a free book on your way in, hold it up. Let's see that free book. Awesome, awesome, that's great. We're kicking it analog tonight. It's hard to hold up an ebook anyway. Tonight's an extra special night in that we're celebrating the release of a new book from each of our poets. And I'm going to introduce each of the poets in the order that they're going to be reading, and then my job becomes to disappear and let them get up here and share their poems with you. First up is Bruce McEver, and he'll be reading from his brand new book, Like Lesser Gods. And tonight is Bruce's Atlanta book launch for his book, Like Lesser Gods. Bruce McEver founded Berkshire Capital Corporation in 1983, pioneering the concept of providing independent merger, acquisition, and strategic advisory services for investment managers and securities firms. And for those of you who do not know, that goes hand in hand with poetry. Obviously. Bruce's poems have appeared in Plowshares, Westview, the Berkshire Review, the Cortland Review, the Connecticut Review, the Chattahoochee Review, Atlanta Review, all over the place, just like Bruce. He works in New York City and lives in Salisbury, Connecticut on Utopia Farm, and now in Palo Alto, California as well. Stuart Deschelle writes of Bruce's new collection that with these poems, he is reminded of James Wright's desire to write the poems of a grown man. These are the works of a truly lived life. Stephen Dobbins says that although quiet, McEver's poems are driven by strong emotion and a love of the world. I agree with that. These poems are a lot of the times heartbreaking, but always enlightening and instructive to most of us. Following Bruce is Christopher Collins, and we're launching his first full-length collection of poems tonight. And this book comes from Poetry at Tech's partnership with Georgia State University and the University of Georgia Press for the Georgia Poetry Prize, which was created by Bruce McEver to honor his first wife, Georgia McEver. In our partnership, we rotate the judging among the 3 universities. And this year, Chris Collins' book was chosen by David Bottoms. And what happens is Chris receives a fat check for $1,000 and an invitation to read not only here at Poetry at Tech, but to give a craft talk at Georgia State. And he did that yesterday, gave a fantastic craft talk. Chris Collins is a former military officer and a 12-year veteran of the U.S. Army who completed 3 combat deployments in both Afghanistan and Iraq. He's a winner of Farmingdale's Pamanok Poetry Award and has published a chapbook gathering Leaves for War. He lives in Independence, Kentucky. But these are the poems of a family man at war. Collins gives us a frank, matter-of-fact view of war, and he has the unique gift of drawing his readers into that combat landscape and makes us feel as though we're right there with him. And reading last is, and let me make sure I get this right. I had a student coach me on this. Iskanda kept telling me, you're not saying it right. Okay, Aimee Nezhukumatathil. Do it. Yay. I get brownie points. Aimee is the author of 3 books of poetry: Lucky Fish, winner of the Hoffer Grand Prize for Prose and Independent Books, At the Drive-In Volcano, and Miracle Fruit. With Ross Gay, she co-authored Lace and Pyrite, a chapbook of nature poems. She's the poetry editor of Orion magazine, and her poems have appeared all over the place as well, in Best American Poetry, American Poetry Review, New England Review, Poetry, Plowshares, Tin House, all the right places. And her awards for her writing include an NEA Fellowship in Poetry and the Pushcart Prize. I think Roxane Gay describes her work best when she says, Aimee's poems contain the elegant twist of a very sharp knife. She writes about the natural world and how we live in it, filling each poem, each page with a true sense of wonder. I don't think Aimee's new book is even out yet. I think the pub date on that one is somewhere around April 10th, but we were able to finagle copies tonight. And so what you're holding in your hand, if you have a copy of Oceanic, is a pre-publication copy, and we're thrilled to have that tonight. So we're considering this Aimee's book release party here in Atlanta too. If you would, after the reading, just keep your seats for just a moment, and I have some really important thank yous to offer. So if you would, let's please welcome Bruce McEver to the stage.
Thank you, Travis, for that introduction. It's great to be here and see a lot of familiar faces, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I think this crowd is really a tribute to Tom and Travis and what they've created at Poetry at Tech, and it's amazing how it's taking on. I'm sorry I'm here tonight with a heavy heart in that I miss Tom. And he was a great friend. I met him, the first time I met him was at a poetry workshop at the 92nd Street Y in New York, where I used to go sometimes to workshops to stay out of bars. I had a wife that was an opera singer, and there was not much to do at night. And Tom and I became friends sort of instantly. It was amazing. And he talked me into, we talked about a chair here, and one that would be a rotating chair. It took about 3 years for Tech to get used to a poetry chair. We tried several things, and finally I just thought maybe Tom should try it. And I talked to, he was at Sarah Lawrence, and talked to him into just coming down here to try it for a session. And I knew, in the back of my mind, I knew that he would see the potential of this thing. and he would just grab it. That's what he did, and the rest is sort of history. And so thank you. And thank you, Jackie and the administration of Georgia Tech for supporting this. And I think it's a great thing for our, for the school. This is my third book. I want to thank the editors of CNR Press for producing this book. It's a book, well, as you collect poems, you begin to, there's more of one type than the other. But as you get a little bit older in life, you lose people. And there's a lot of elegies and poems in here. And also it's a fight through the loss of a marriage and a regaining of love. So there is hope at the end, but it's, as Stephen Dobbins says, this is a brave book, a book for grown-ups. So anyway. First one's, you can tell something's wrong here at the beginning of the book. It's called The Fog of Separation. And where I live in Connecticut, some friends have been there, but there's this mountain, it's where two rivers come together. And when the seasons change, the valley fills with fog. And it is so beautiful because it just fills the valley, and then it retreats back across the river and goes and like forms a big halo around the mountain that's in front of me. Fog of separation fills the valley, crosses into June, our anniversary. It came overnight, like a nocturnal creature feeding the things you wish you had done differently. Its trail clear in the morning dew. In the east, a glow backlights the ghost of morning, like her need of space, a void over the mountain of your old attitudes and gripes you must climb over to change. The wispy curtain retreats to a circle around the mountain's base, leaving a white halo. Maybe she'll call. You carry your phone everywhere not to miss its ring. Perhaps an answer to your email, your text, or one of your overpouring letters. Maybe she'll say thanks for the flowers sent, just to let you explain. But the fog vanishes into a cacophony of birds singing up the start of your empty summer. Next one progresses the relationship, or the relationship progresses. Actually, my friend John Robertson's here, and he lived through that first incident with me. This is the inn at Germantown, and this takes place on Memorial Day. At the first gray of morning, stirs me in a strange room. Then the birds began their overtures. Human kindness sleeps on, soft beside me. It's the first woman that I've been with in months. I dress in stock and toe down creaky stairs to a kitchen piled with last night's dishes. I managed to make coffee, and the wafts of the dark elixir fill the parlor. On the wall, a romantic reproduction of Daphnis and Chloe, scantily clad, seeking shelter from an oncoming storm. I find milk in a veranda that wraps around this classic inn. Flags still festooned lamp poles from Friday's parade, celebrating the town's heroes. A will-o-wisp fills a low field beyond the barbecue pit at the end of the porch. Like a leaden fog, it ebbs and flows, played by the breeze and the sun's warming. The meadow unveils a profusion of daisy and black-eyed Susan. the good ground in the sower's parable. As there's been no word for weeks, I was staggered by the last words of my ex-wife's co-worker, who managed to call me before going home. She reported my ex-wife's okay, but has taken off her wedding ring. This poem is for a very famous man here in Atlanta named Bevel Jones. I don't know how many of you may know Bevel Jones. He's a bishop of the Methodist Church, and there's a chair for him in the room. He was the pastor of my parents were one of his first parishioners. He built a big church in South Atlanta, and went on to build others and become a bishop. And he was really my mentor. He married me. He buried my first wife and married me to another wife. This was the bishop, and he now has dementia, and I don't know if you've ever been to one of those sad wards, but it's really very sad. And what really affects me is as I look in those rooms and you see the pictures that are there, it's just heartbreaking to me. Anyway, and this man, I saw him this past week, and the conditions gotten a lot worse. This was the bishop, hard to believe, hunched over in his wheelchair, drooling at the nurse's station. His eyes brightened when he saw me. "All the way from New York," he yelped, and urged me to wheel him to his room. I must say also that he was a great Georgia Tech fan. He hung out up at the upper decks there at every game. There he smiled and picked up a tan cap, sporting a yellow jacket with its fist up, and put it on jauntily askew. On the TV was a forest of family pictures, like those in every room up and down this ward. Memories clung to the residents' slow slide to oblivion. One photo was larger, a muscular youth, a vision of Apollo in an Emory t-shirt at a track meet 60 years ago, chest out, breaking the tape. He asked me about my wife. He'd married us, as I hesitated to say. She's left me and leaving with another man. He was quiet for a long time. He said, "Good Lord, it must hurt. It cuts me. But don't let this get you down. You are blessed." He drifted away, insisting, like a true Georgian, that I have a coat to help heal me, until his shrink came in and asked I say my goodbye. That's the first part of this poem. It's a long poem. This is the last part. He used to call me up, and late at night, I had an uncle like that, as he was passing away, he'd call up all his friends late at night. And Bev used to call up all his friends. And he used to also talk me into coming over to take him to church services. And during Easter week, I would take him. Afterwards, he'd sometimes, as he did with his friends, call me late. "Have you heard about the man who had dementia?" We would laugh together. Sometimes he'd talk me into taking him out to an Easter week service. Bev knew everyone at a critical time in their lives, having married, baptized them, buried a relative. Our visits took hours while he caught up and grazed on free sandwiches till full. As we were leaving, he asked, "Hey, Bruce, you know why I always wear my hat?" And I sort of ventured gingerly, "Because you're bald?" "No, I always keep it handy in case I have to take up a collection." He's a man in the spirit of Billy Graham. Anyway, let's see. This one's called Concert at Opus 40. There's a place near Woodstock called Opus 40. That is one of the great earthworks, if you've ever seen. It's a bluestone quarry that this guy, Harvey Fite, made into just an amazing place. It's like a Mayan temple or something. And he was a great sculptor during the 30s. He lived there, and he was actually a friend of Joseph Campbell, who lived there and read for about 6 years after the Depression. The other thing is that this couple that's mentioned in here at the end is sort of the ideal couple. They both went through, I've known them through their life history, but they both went through terrible marriages to begin with and found one another, and it's just a wonderful story how they appreciate each other now and take care of one another and the little things they do. Anyway, enough talk. Concert at Opus 40. A monolith stakes the sky, an exclamation point of a massive Stonehenge, measuring the mountain beyond, distant blue in the haze, an aloof overlord last lighted by the setting sun. Below, the band is spread out on the stone earthwork like a platoon ready for a firefight. The refugees and rhythms from the Love Inn, not far away Woodstock, and the audience dances enthralled, drawn by the primordial beat of the tom-toms, turning on libidos, liberating picnic blankets and chairs. The writhing crowd, taken back to a wilder youth, now more sober, celebrate this and life's monuments, like the one we dance around, built by the sculptor Harvey Fite, the man who rededicated his life to building this massive work, comparable to the pyramids of the Yucatan, whose carvings he studied for his sculptures, and displayed here on his bluestone, and displayed here on this bluestone quarry. He shaped this with a lifetime of stone piling, then stepped back. It was his masterpiece, his opus. Nearby after the concert, our hostess Harriet sits by her koi pond, ringed by the same bluestone, and calls the circling school by their name. Smokey Joe, Chinese checkers, lemon meringue, and Miss Moby, like she's auditioning carnival clowns. Around the house, Paul's well-tended garden, fodder for their cooking and pickling, and an oak hangs with druid-like offerings of bird feeders shading all. We sit around this tree, talking of the scars of former loves, healing them with our fellowship, lasting through it all. The mountain looms distant, a good father listening to our confessions. This was actually one of Tom's favorite poems of his collection. Just a little short poem. It's called, and I'm sort of amazed. I live, as some of you know, I had a farm in outside of Atlanta in Monroe, Good Hope, and it had these amazing camellia bushes, and I was always amazed at how they bloomed during the winter, but you know, they just sort of never made it. It was always very sad to me. I was up before the cold dawn, looking out the kitchen window, watching the full moon setting, the luminous lamp turning night into a ghost-like morning. Below, a camellia bush bloomed full white, its petals vulnerable and inviting, risking all for an early spring. My companion gracing mild winter days until the freeze, this unrequited love, dressed for a prom that didn't come. Camellia buds now shriveled are scattered in the garden, where I swept them with sadness hard to say. This is a poem called Restarting the World. And it deals with some Mesoamerican mythology that every 52 years they had to restart the world according to their calendar. And they actually had a quite accurate calendar. Dr. Knospel and I were down at the end of the world when they calculated that the world would end. But what was amazing was basically that's when the day that they chose that is the day that our solar system aligns perfectly with our galaxy. So how did they figure that out so long ago? But anyway, restarting the world. Under a scattering of stars, we talk of constellations and our zodiacs aligning since our meeting through friends. A half moon holds an ethereal lantern for a summary of life histories, while a soft breeze encourages the palms. Relaxing in two chaises side the dreamscape, from a groomed slope to a canal, dancing with glittering lights of the villas on the opposite shore, only broken by the silhouettes of sloops hulking in the channel. Gingerly we go inside and light candles in the living room and speak of our departed beloved. We speculate with a kiss, hesitate and try another. We climb the circular stairs to your high chamber with a ceiling like a Mayan temple. Up there, a ceiling fan whirls slow, moving the anticipation. The Mayans believed only heart sacrifice could restart a stalled world cycle, rekindle the sacred fire. We widowers offer ours for this cause. Tear open our chest, spark dry tinder, coax kindling to smoke, soon fan to a blaze. In the morning downstairs in my guest room, I'm up early out of a dream, having sleepwalked heaven. I search for my glasses, and I find them on the living room table, next to some charred matchsticks that started the whole thing. This last one is a poem that I was asked to write a poem. I had the honor of working with Dr. Clough at the Smithsonian and try to decide what they were going to do with the religious objects that they had. And we had a number of symposiums across all religious traditions. It was really quite a thing to do, and they have an amazing collection. And by the way, what we started was the first ever exhibit of the history of American religion across all traditions. And it's going to run through June. So you need to get up to Washington, D.C. and see this is an American History Museum. But this was the start of it, was a symposium. And they asked me to write a poem about religion that was not religious, so I couldn't mention any traditions or anything like that. So you can figure this one out. November sunset, Maidstone Island. A peach glows, silhouettes of pine churned by the sea's blow. Like a bonsai monk contemplating days in, sheltered by the dunes, sculptured by the same invisibility. Across the narrow causeway over the half-ice flyway, a late foursome ambles off the course, joking after a round, relishing their fellowship. Around the bridge, a scattering of swans graze the waters, where they winter and look up in unison above. Long streams and bending bees of geese clamor to descend into the peace of these tidal pools, ringed in cattails and reeds, mirrored on placid waters and radiant in gloam's half-light. Around this small island in the middle of it all, the village lights flicker, as they have since men came here and watched the day's last quarry overwhelm the unsayable absence that fills us. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name's Chris Collins, and I want to thank David Bottoms for selecting my work, My American Night, for the Georgia Poetry Award. This is my first full collection, and as Travis said, I was a military officer for 12 years in the United States Army Reserve. So this book was about 15 years in the making. And it's split up into 3 parts. Part 1 is more or less war. Part 2 is war and family. And part 3 is actually the title poem of the book, My American Night. So I'm going to read a few poems from each section, and tonight I'm going to read My American Night. The first poem I'm going to read is actually not in any of the sections. It just begins the actual book. Because being in the military and going to war, you're supposed to go to war and be extremely violent and then come home and turn it off. And it's kind of hard to do, especially when you have children. So the title of this poem is called Some Days, and the title goes right into the poem. Some days with this bayonet, I can cut your throat, can disarticulate your body from your head. Some days, though, I can cut a dandelion stem to place its yellow flower head into my daughter's hair. My days are never balanced. Some days I am for violence, some days for beauty. The poet Gregory Orr, who I absolutely love Gregory Orr, he wrote this book called Poetry as Survival. And he has this theory about lyric poetry that, in life we have things that happen to us that can be very chaotic, but we also have things that happen to us that are like extremely beautiful. And how do we contain those chaotic happenings or those beautiful happenings to us? And he says you can do it through lyric poetry. The poem itself contains it, and you put it into the poem and then you push it out into the world. And he called this basically ordering the disorder. So the title of this poem is entitled Ordering Disorder, after Gregory Orr. And it does have a dairy phrase in it called Mohim Nist, which it roughly translated means you're okay. I cannot cauterize the memory of your legs shredded, the thick femoral blood spraying upon fatigues my sandcake palms. I say Mohim Nist, but I lie. And at only 8 years old, you too know I lie. My words whispered to lull your face and my hands shaking are not a white-hot iron that can sear flesh, save your life. Your lips soften in truth. Next poem is a little bit of maybe dark irony. So when you go on a combat mission, intelligence tells you, predict the worst. So we get this mission brief that basically we're going to die. There's no way that we're going to live. enemy is just going to totally destroy us. So the title of this poem is extremely long, and the poem itself is very, very short. Meditation on a Black Hawk landing in a hot LZ where the enemy's most likely course of action is small arms fire combined with simultaneous detonations of command wire improvised explosive devices. At least there's death and the chance to go home early. So when I was in Afghanistan, we had Afghani soldiers working with us, and this was Afghanistan 2002, so very early in the war. And we had this Afghani soldier that we called Crazy. He was crazy. And some things happened and everything, so this is basically a prose poem on some incidents that took place. It's called Crazy on Bicycle, after Bruce Weigel. It's a prose poem. At the basis checkpoint near the southern tip of Bagram village, he pedaled his rickety bicycle to a 3-man fire team operating the wooden shack. "Me too, Askar," he said, "soldier." Pointing at the crotch-torn camouflage pants, hued in desert buckwheat brown, he slung a rusted AK over his left shoulder by rope. "OB? Water?" "ODI. Food." We told him. "No." A week later, he returned, pedaling his bicycle to the concertina wire without the AK, in the same pants. "Pay C," he said. "Money." "Me too, Askar." He smiled, then he pulled up his left pant leg to show the plastic prosthetic. "Taliban," he said. "Taliban." He began talking gibberish, his arms flailing fast, recounting the firefight he had the night he lost the leg in battle. "Liwane," our interpreter said as he spun his left finger around his ear. "The dude's Liwane, man. Crazy." The F-man tapped his prosthetic leg with his hand and smiled. "Pay C, yes?" "Good, yes. Pay C." Our interpreter began laughing, but one of the privates said, "Tell him $10. Once translated through razor wire, the man flopped onto the ground and tugged the white prosthetic from the stump and tossed it over. The private wadded an American 10 and shot it, basketball style, into the man's lap. Money more than the local soldier could earn in one Afghan year. Balancing himself with both hands, the soldier hoisted his one-legged body onto his bike, and we Americans hooted hysterically as he grabbed the handles, balancing as best he could, pumping the right pedal with the one good leg away into the city outskirts of Bagram. So my son was born when I was in Afghanistan, so I didn't get to see him born. And my greatest fear was that I was going to die and not be able to see him. I wasn't afraid of dying per se, but just dying and not being able to see my son. So the title of this poem is called Distance for Patrick. And each child lifted and broken by ignited air is a piece of you I see and cannot fix. So I'm going to move into part 2. Part 2 is dealing with war and family. So the soldier coming back home. The first poem is entitled Milk. let me give you a little background. During Ramadan in Iraq, the enemy would give children plastic pistols and try to give them money to point plastic pistols at soldiers. Because then what would happen? Yeah, soldier would shoot them, okay? And then that looks bad on the American soldier. So we would really try to, try to get the children not to accept these plastic pistols and money. So the title of this poem is called Milk. Only white milk bubbles from my daughter's mouth, but her frothing lips at dinner are the bloodied breasts of the boy suffocating on the dirt road just north of Baghdad. A plastic pistol at his side, collapsed by a rifle's round expertly fired from my M16A2. So a lot of these poems are written when my children were young. Like I said, it took me 15 years to write this book. So this is a poem basically when I got back from my second tour of duty, which was in Iraq. Of that first night, I laid on my side so he'd burrow into my arms, his head pressed against my left bicep. And my right hand slowly slid along the little muscled body, inspecting each of his parts. His blonde head, his 2 arms with 2 hands and 10 fingers, his 2 legs with 2 feet and 5 toes on each. In silence, I stared at my wife, and she saw in my eyes the letter I had sent months ago of the boy I found scattered in pieces under the date palm. She touched my face, and I tried to sleep. So as your children get older, they get a little bit braver, kind of. And they think, Call of Duty, that's real war, video games and everything. So, a question of war. He asked me if I ever killed someone and rushes from the kitchen table, but I ask him to stay to listen. Collateral damage, I say, is the polite way of expressing the death of civilians who unknowingly mingle with the enemy. He's 13 now, fascinated with video games glamorizing real wars. I rise to leave, and he says, "But Dad, you didn't answer my question." I did. This next poem is my wife's favorite, which I do not know why. It's a sad poem, but it's her favorite poem. She just really remembers this happening. So I'm on leave from Iraq, my second deployment, and it was during a blizzard that I'm on leave. So, and making a snowman with my son. So the title of this poem is called Swing. A late February afternoon, as my wife and I watched through frosted glass of the front window, my son prepares his snowsuited body to swing a metal bat into the chest of a snowman. From his form, I see he was taught well by the coaches, other boys' fathers, at the school's summer t-ball camp. His stance balanced and centered, each boot pressed firmly in snow, his grip choked properly on the bat, knuckles of the left at bottom aligned with knuckles of the right at top. It's a pose rehearsed over and over with his mother along the backyard berm. his body's arrangement to limit the wrist motion, forcing the bat into his palms and not fingers, a stronger swing. Into the winter yard, I watch as he rocks slowly heel to toe as if anticipating some imaginary pitch, and I sigh when he screams his booted left foot forward in a desperate, ready-to-hit strike. My wife lowers her eyes, walks away from the glass into the other room, but I still hear the sound she makes. My son's hips, shoulders, arms, and wrists rotate in a perfect, full extended swing. The bat's metal tip busting one large chunk of the snowman just below the chin, the white lump flying the freshly plowed street. He drops the bat, collapses into the snow, and sends his cry through bare maples. God, it is a good swing, I say to no one. It takes my son most of my last afternoon to destroy what he and I created the previous day in the snow. Not until street lamps shadow the pleas of his mother does he come inside. Tomorrow, he knows I return to the place where snow never comes, to finish a tour begun 11 months before. Swing is all he could do. This is the last one from part 2. It's entitled A Soldier's Wife. Sprinkling Old Spice fresh aftershave into a white hand towel, she hovers at his side of the bathroom sink vanity, inhales. So My American Night is a lyrical sequence. I've actually never read this in public before, so we'll see how this goes. It's a mixture of a couple of different incidents and everything. It's in 8 parts, so I'll try to go fast. My American Night, Part 1. As tall as an extended M4 ready for battle and slung across the chest, armored by plates, by ammo, by the early morning anxiety each soldier sweats beneath desert fatigues, this young Afghan boy stands with his father in the Bagram black cold, rushing down snow-capped peaks of the Hindu Kush, waiting with 200 other local men idling for work, for jobs we Americans will not do for ourselves. 200 tribal men, proud and hovering in body-hugging groups behind barbed razor wire, waiting for a chance to be one of maybe 50 chosen today to labor for $1 US, a chance to be one of the few to slog and burn our shit dumped in sliced 55-gallon drums. This boy, he's the only child among men. I see him latch 3 of his father's fingers tightly into his right hand as American soldiers slide gloved hands up and down men's bodies covered in earth-colored kurtas and churdars. Now he too is touched by war. 2. This young boy, he's covered in pink outerwear, no doubt given to him by some NGO working Parwan province. Mid-thigh to head, he could be American. A bubble jacket with busted zipper and only 2 working buttons. A blue fuzzy topping his cap reads Antarctica in scripted English. He pulls the soft cap down close over his ears. Seeing him here as I order Third World lives in and out of razor wire, this boy does not know the distance I feel in this cold, in this war, in this country. 7,000 miles across ocean, desert, time. Back home, this boy could be mine. His brown hair, his brown eyes, his skin tan and dirtied. He could be any American boy working a Saturday morning with his father. But beneath his Western garb, his land, his people. The tan, knee-length kurta, filthy and dried mud, his salwar too long and rolled in bunches above feet, strapped in vegetable tan majorities too worn from walking. 3. Journal Order 1 Alpha, no one permitted beyond this point. 8 HESCO barriers stuffed with gravel and blood of torn Afghani palms, mixed with the dirty white of Bagram's first snowfall. The barriers cordon the plywood checkpoint, since sandbags don't do shit. 2 soldiers, boys really, heavy in combat gear, wanting to kill. I, each Afghan tribesman, progressing the funnel of razor wire and dogs, and placed by American soldiers. The MPs laugh at flesh nips of the dog's titanium teeth. Hadith, to be bitten is to be unclean. Soldiers' mouths fill with laughter as Afghan men cower, one by one. These proud tribal men leave our presence. They are nothing but colored silhouettes of ranged targets, popped up to be shot down. These 2 soldiers manning the plywood checkpoint tower have trained, wanting to kill, to fire, fire, fire. It's December, almost Christmas. Holiday cheer is a Kevlar helmet on a miniature snowman without eyes. Chem lights create 2 arms and an orange dick. 4. Allah Akbar, God is great, raising rock, ripping flesh against flesh, dust, sulfur, silence. 5. Going to have to keep up with this one. Break, 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 Sledgehammer 3, Sledgehammer 3, Voodoo 6, over. Voodoo 6, Sledgehammer 3, go ahead, over. Contact break, explosion break, checkpoint 1 Alpha break. Prepare for salute, over. Voodoo 6, copy contact, copy explosion, copy salute, break. Standby 1, break. Voodoo 6, QRF notified, en route, break. QRF ETI 4 mics, break. Go ahead with your salute, over. Sledgehammer 3, standby, salute, break. Lima 1, break. Size, 1 unknown local national, 1 single suicide vest, break. Lima 2, break. Activity, 1 confirmed S-vest detonation, break. Lima 3, break. Location, 10 meters southwest, checkpoint 1 Alpha Tower, break. Lima 4, break. Unit, 1 unknown local national, break. Local national is dressed in civilian clothing, break. Lima 5, break. Time, 22:08:37, Zulu, December 2002, break. Lima 6, break. Equipment, 1 known S-vest, over. Voodoo 6, Sledgehammer 3, we copy, salute, break. We copy, 1 confirmed S-vest detonation at checkpoint 1 Alpha, 10 meters southwest. 1 Alpha Tower out, Delta Tango Golf 22:08:37, Zulu, December 2002, break. Voodoo 6, can you give us number of casualties? Over. Sledgehammer 3, Voodoo 6, civilian casualties unknown at this time, break. U.S. forces, casualties unknown at this time, over. Voodoo 6, Sledgehammer 3, good copy, over. Sledgehammer 3, Voodoo 6, out. Six, bodies upon gravel, bodies upon wood splintered, bodies upon razor wire tangled flesh. It is his own and others. Eyes widen, lips grimace. From his face the brown of the Hindu Kush drains. His cheeks are pale and sweat, but he does not cry. He does not cry. No sound. Propping his torso forward, he follows the contours of his body down from his chest. His pink jacket shredded open, his kurta splotched in blood, his salwar ripped at the knees, then nothing. His eyes searched left to right for the vegetable tan Majori's too worn from walking. Nothing. Nothing below the kneecaps but one bone shard jutting from the right leg. His hands feel left to right for his father's fingers. Nothing. Nothing but blood-wet gravel and splintered wood. He stares into the dust. Sulfuric air, eyes watering. His eyes weaken, his torso settles. He does not cry. He does not cry. 7. 2 soldiers, boys really, manning a checkpoint tower, cower in a dust plume, enveloping a plywood checkpoint. Sulfur fills the bedroom morning. Orders in anguish scream skyward in Dari in English. Neither soldier moves, both gasp and choke. 8. And this is the last section. The boy recurs nightly. 0837 December 22nd, 2002, Bagram, Afghanistan. In dream, 7/21st cash. Atop a white sheeted hospital bed he sits, licking a tall swirl of vanilla ice cream from a cake cone. Melting sugar covers his fingertips. He switches hands and sucks each individual finger clean of America. He smiles and smiles and smiles with each long lick. His legs amputated above the kneecaps, bandaged by bright white wraps, emblazoned with U.S. His blue hospital shirt, too long and bunched mid-thigh by his army nurses, also reads U.S. U.S. Us. But he's not one of us. He is not U.S. He's not American. He is the Kurta. He is the Sawar. He is the Majoris. He is the snow caps of the Hindu Kush. He is the green valley of Parwan province. He is that Bagram day. He is my American night. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Travis, what you've put together here is so incredible, beyond belief. I've been to many of these and they are not nearly as well organized and put together as this. It's such an honor to read with you both today as well. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention this one little thing in the spirit of Tom Lux. I met him back in 2014, and I had a little 3-year-old boy and a 3-year-old, or a 3 and a 6-year-old running around at a festival. And I was really nervous because there was no other kids around. And he caught my husband, who was trying to corral my boys and keep them quiet. And he actually told my husband and I, he's like, they want to come see you? My boys were saying, Mommy, I want to see your poems. And I was trying to push them out of the theater. And Tom actually said, you come and sit by me. If anyone says anything about these kids, you have them talk to me about it. And I don't know how else to explain it. I've never had anybody say that to me. And I've certainly never had a man say that to me actually as well. And I just really appreciated that. So I had to share that with you all. I currently live in Mississippi, but I did my high school education in Ohio, in a town where it wasn't maybe quite as intense as the town from Friday Night Lights. You guys football fans? Yes, you guys are football fans here. So it's not quite that intense, but it's somewhat intense. And you actually have to have tryouts to be a mascot there. So it was usually a basketball player in the off season, but it was my first year being there, and I love football. I did not want to be a cheerleader, so I tried out, and to my great surprise, you are looking at Ohio royalty here, folks. I am the first female football mascot of Western Ohio. Thank you very much. No, no, you don't have to clap. No, but the key is that I could not tell anybody this, except for my family and my sister. So Actually, one of Tom's former students, Ross Gay, actually challenged me to write this poem, and this is called "The Mascot of Beaver Creek High Breaks Her Silence." There are some suits more difficult to remove. Spades, armor, tweed in the summer. But those nights you thought I was home, dateless, studying for chemistry, memorizing the dates of epic battles, I was working myself into a lather of sweat for a field of angry young men. Sometimes they were so close I could feel their hot breath in the space between my head and my furry neck. Even the captain and the cheerleaders never went that far. Every hand that once reached for me still haunts me at the most unexpected times, as I place vegetables on the grocery belt or walking the glow wall walkway at the Detroit airport. Something still pulls me to the ground, and it's not the crowd, it's not the scent of cola or popcorn, the tinge of engine grease, or a truck revving at homecoming. If you slice a jacaranda bloom between two glass slides and place it on a microscope, the corolla will always fight for the light. If you once posed for any pictures with me and still have them scattered in your attic, look carefully at the dark netting of my mouth. If you squint hard, you can see my actual teeth clenched into a small scream. It was high school after all. I was always like that, and I was always cheering for something. And I guess I still am. Something is always worth cheering for. There is always some cheer worth something. Cheer for some worth, always. My family and I are planning a trip, hopefully in the next couple of years, to India, northern India, to visit the Taj Mahal. My father's from India, but he comes from the south of India. And, you know, a lot of times people are like, "You're Indian and you haven't been to the Taj Mahal?" And it's like, okay, you're from Georgia and you haven't been to Alaska? You know, I mean, it's a big country. It's a big country. At any rate, I always say that the worst of humanity is hiding in anonymous comment boxes in the internet. That's where the worst of humanity lives, where they could hide behind these cowardly comments. And I didn't realize this until I was doing some research for this trip. You can actually rate and review the 7 wonders of the world, all the different wonders of the world. So you can review the pyramids of Egypt, you can review the Great Wall of China, the Taj Mahal, all those kinds of things. So this is a found poem. And what a found poem is I just borrowed the text. So none of this I made up. All I did was break the lines and shape it into stanzas. So this is an actual, you can check me on this is all on the internet. I have a couple of them, but this one I'm gonna read, it's called 1-Star Reviews of the Great Wall of China. This is not the experience of a lifetime. It was awful. I couldn't enjoy the scenery because I was too busy trying not to trample or be trampled. Besides that, it was great. I'm just kidding. I hated it. The crowds are crazy. The pollution is crazy. Nobody here can speak English. Back in my day, the walls were more beautiful and they didn't have to be so tall. I didn't feel good with my leg that day, but my wife really wanted to visit the Chinese wall and I said, fine, let's do it. But soon I got tired. I failed in front of my wife because of this wall, so I'm never coming back. It was raining. It was foggy. It was raining so much. It's just a wall. I have one on the Taj Mahal, and you guys know that the Taj Mahal is a monument to an ancient king's wife upon her death, right? Okay, so the last line of it, this was an actual comment. Someone was like, 1 star, can you believe this tomb has no rides? I'm telling you, it's the worst of humanity. All right. All right, when I read this poem out to high schoolers, I always have to make this caveat because they don't know, I think they think I'm making this up, but I think this crowd will know. I'm a child of the 80s, 70s and 80s, and back then, I know it sounds crazy, but for an evening show, it was a drama. It was nominated for Emmys. There was a show called The Incredible Hulk. And I know it said, there was no, so it's not the cartoon, there was an actual man playing the scientist, and then an actual man, it would be a very bad editing job, and then an actual bodybuilder man would play the Hulk. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, good. Does anyone know who the Hulk was played by? No, okay, good. That's where we could tell who are the millennials, who are the people that are not millennials yet. So, anyway, all my friends had Ricky Schroeder, Michael Jackson, those were all their crushes. Mine was a little unconventional. It was Bruce Banner. And that's the, oh no, not Bruce Banner, that's the character. Bill Bixby is the actor's name. And I wanted to just show this real quick. Has the saddest theme song, I think, in the history of TV drama. Okay. Do you guys remember this? Let me just... So, yeah, I don't think a show like that could ever be made now, you know, and actually win awards and stuff like that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up on YouTube, or I think on FX, they show reruns. So that's the Incredible Hulk I want you to picture, the 70s version. This is called What I Learned from the Incredible Hulk. When it comes to clothes, make an allowance for the unexpected. Be sure the spare in the trunk of your station wagon with wood paneling is not in need of repair. A simple jean jacket says, hey, if you aren't trying to smuggle rare Incan coins through this peaceful little town and kidnap the local orphan, I can be one heck of a mellow kind of guy. But no matter how angry a man gets, I learned that a smile and a soft stroke on his bicep can work wonders. I learned that male chests also have nipples, warm and established, and I learned that green does not always mean envy. It's the meadows full of clover and chicory that the Hulk seeks for rest, a return to normal. And sometimes a woman gets to go with him, her tiny hands correcting his rumpled hair, the cuts in his hand. Green is the space between water and sun. It's the cover for a quiet man, each of his ribs shuttling drops of liquid light. All right. Just because I'm in awe of so many of the students that are in here, I had to give a little bit of background on this. I was a failed chemistry major, and I did not know there were any living poets until my junior year in college. So you guys are already way ahead of me on this. That's how bad my humanities kind of education was. I learned very early on, since I was 3 years old, if I said, I'm gonna be a doctor just like Mom, I would get applause. And nobody actually it didn't occur to anybody to ask if I liked chemistry or if I was good at chemistry. I will just tell you this is a red flag. I made it through my junior year in honors chemistry without ever lighting a Bunsen burner by myself. So that should have been a red flag. And then I also, I always said my greatest gift to humanity is not becoming a doctor because I saved so many lives that way. But when I told my parents this my junior year in college, so I want you to picture, MCATs were supposed to happen in 2 weeks. Spring break, junior year, I sat them down. My stoic Indian father, my vivacious Filipino mother, and said, Mom, Dad, I I have something to tell you. I'm not going to be chemistry major anymore. I'm dropping out of the pre-med program, but I found something that I love, and it's called poetry. So I'm going to learn. I don't know how to write it, but I'm going to learn, and I'm going to figure it out in 1.5 years before I graduate. So my stoic Indian father cried. That's probably 1 of 5 times I've ever seen that man cry, and one of them is telling him I wanted to study poetry. My mother didn't speak to me the rest of spring break, so it was a very tumultuous spring break. Finally, the last day, I was about to go back. My father sat me down, and it still gets me choked up because he said, Aimee, I can't do the accent, but he was like, Aimee, we don't have any idea what you're doing with your life, but if you could promise us that you will feel like a student for the rest of your life, then you have our blessing. And, I didn't really need their blessing, but I wanted their blessing, that kind of thing. And to this day, now it's almost embarrassing. Anytime I publish something, they're like, look at my daughter, telling their neighbors all this stuff. So after, I have their full support. They've been so amazing. I wanted to treat them once I got a job, actually, and I think they thought I was going to be homeless or something like that. During that time, though, when they were not talking to me, I could hear them in the kitchen, and I know one of them, I think it was my mother, it was like, this is because you let her be a mascot, that they didn't, to their credit, they didn't know what a mascot was. They just were like, she wants to grow up to be Mickey Mouse, that's the thing. So I wanted, for all of their support, for all of the trauma I put them through, I wanted to treat them to a quick weekend in New York City, and I wanted to go to this restaurant that serves this illegal soup. And it's illegal because if you don't prepare it correctly, you will die. So you have to sign you have to waive your rights to sue the restaurant. So here I'm trying to give a thank you to my parents and watching them sign away their lives because they were so excited. The Japanese have a proverb for this soup, and it goes, those who eat fugu soup are so stupid, but those who don't eat fugu soup are even more stupid. This is called the fugu soup blues. Nothing good can come out of eating something named porcupine fish. It's like playing Russian roulette when you cook it. The pulse of toxin in its sweet little body can kill 30 men. But this is the most delicious of all fishes. It's the sweet meat is almost sugared and the salty broth mix. Man, it's worth almost any death. Can you taste the pure poison hidden in the skin folds? Can you forget what you eat may kill you even as you wipe your mouth with the back of your hand? Consider the way the porcupine fish dies. It's the only fish that can close its eyes. When a cleaver comes near its head, it even winces. Sushi chefs complain of the noise it makes on the chopping block, like crying, even though fishermen try to stitch its small mouth shut. And the blinking. Don't we expect fish eyes to be dead black and dumb? You cannot stop this hunger. When something this good can kill you, every pinprick of white pain just adds more flavor. But when the waiter with the curvy smile asks if you want seconds, please, please, I beg of you, set down your spoon. All right, I just have 2 more. This next one, I don't have much to say about it. I wish I didn't have to read it anymore. I wrote this in a lull of school shootings. So that was maybe 2 weeks without a school shooting or something, a couple years ago. This is called Next. When my 6-year-old son was painting birds during art class, his principal ordered a full lockdown because an armed man was spotted skulking nearby. When I got the news, I could feel my heart throb in my neck. If you pushed even a single finger to my arm, I'd surely burst. Sometimes I think of baby toucans who fall out of their nest. Sometimes a person scoops them in the bucket of her shirt and brings these fallen birds, their necks not even fully feathered yet, to a vet. When toucans are babies, Their beaks glow only the palest yellow. The famous rainbow has yet to bite and show. This last one I'm going to read is for all the students in here. And a few years ago, Toy Derricotte, one of the co-founders of Cave Canem, was receiving an award at the National Book Awards, and she said that joy is an act of resistance. And so I love that quote. It's just so simple, but joy is an act of resistance. And I think of that now more than ever, but also because for so much of my growing up, I never saw brown bodies, especially Asian American bodies, allowed to express joy in literature, in movies, in TV shows. Anytime I saw an Asian American on TV or movies, it was like the butt of the joke, or like a Pooh on The Simpsons, or the Dragon Lady Murderess, or something like that, or Long Duck Dong from the 80s movies, that kind of thing. So it was always made a joke, and and I loved reading. I was such a nerd. I loved reading about shells. I loved reading about bugs, insects, the search for the giant squid. But one thing I never saw in the author photos of these books is I never saw a brown person writing these books, and I never saw anybody, none of my teachers kind of gave me books that featured brown people in them, actually. So to me, that's like, when you don't see yourself reflected in literature, or you're made fun of in TV and books, then it's almost like, gosh, are Asian women not supposed to like nature? Are they not supposed to like being outside? So this is for the students, and hoping that they find joy as an act of resistance as well. This is called Invitation, and this is the centerpiece poem in my new collection, Oceanic. Invitation. Come in, the water is fine. You can't get lost here. Even if you wanted to hide behind a clutch of spiny oysters, I'll find you. If you ever leave me by night, through a boat, you'll see the arrangement of golden sun stars in a sea of milk, and though it's tempting to visit them, stay. I've been trained to look up and up all my life, no matter the rumble on earth, but I've learned it's okay to glance down once in a while into the sea. So many lessons bubble up if you just know where to look. Clouds of plankton hurricaning and open whale mouths will send you east, and chewy urchins will slide you west. Squid know how to be rich with 10 empty arms, and there are humans who don't know the feel of a good bite or embrace at least once a day. Underneath you, narwhals spin upside down while their singular tooth needles you like a compass pointed towards home. Deep, where imperial volutes and hatchetfish live, colors humans have not yet named glow in caves made from black coral and clamshell. A giant squid finally let itself be captured in a photograph, and who knows what will happen next? If you still want to look up, I hope you see the dark sky as oceanic, boundless, limitless, like all the shades of blue revealed in a glacier. Let's listen how this planet really hums with so much wing, so much fur, and so much fin. Thank you so much.